online and joining us on live streaming, and best wishes to everyone for 2024. This is City Council. Roger.
Thank you, Lord Provost. Welcome to this meeting of Dundee City Council, which is being held remotely in terms of Section 43 of the Local Governance in Scotland Act 2003. All members in attendance are able to fully participate in the meeting, which is being live streamed. Should any member need to leave the meeting for any reason, can they please use the chat to advise of this? If a member loses their connection, they should make every effort to rejoin the meeting, but if this is not possible, the Committee Services Officer will note their absence for the remainder of the meeting. If you have to leave the meeting due to a declaration of interest, you must remain out of the meeting until invited back in. Would all members please mute their microphones when not speaking to avoid background noise, and turn off any smart speakers. Please start the meeting with your camera on. Your face will appear on the screen when you are speaking. If your connection is poor, you may wish to turn off your camera and see if this improves matters. If this doesn't help, you may wish to quickly leave the meeting and rejoin. If you wish to raise a point of order, ask a question, speak on any item or move a motion or amendment, please use the chat when the relevant item is called. The convener will then invite you to speak. Would members of the press and public please not post messages in the chat? Where items are for noting or where there has been no disagreement expressed, the convener will call for any member who has a contrary view to indicate this through the chat, otherwise the item will be agreed. Please would members not use the chat for any other purposes, as those joining the meeting by telephone cannot see the meeting chat and therefore will not be able to follow the debate. Although we are operating in a different way, this is still a formal meeting of the Council, and the required standards of behaviour and discussion are the same as in a face-to-face meeting. Standing orders will apply to the proceedings, and the terms of the Councillors' Code of Conduct will also apply in the normal way. Does any member have any queries regarding this procedure? There are no queries, Lord Provost, so I will now ask the Committee Services Officer to take a roll call for the minute. Thank you.
Thank you. As indicated, I will now take a roll call for the minute. I would ask that members confirm their presence when I call their names. Lord Provost.
Present.
Councillor Alexander.
Evening, I'm here.
Councillor Anderson.
Present.
Deputy Lord Provost Cordell.
Present.
Bailey Dawson.
I'm here.
Councillor El Nakla.
Hi, I'm present.
Councillor Flynn. Councillor Flynn.
I can
He's
see
in the
him
list
on
as two.
screen.
Thank
So it's
you.
the same.
Councillor Hunter.
Good evening, I'm here.
Councillor Lynn.
Present.
Bailey Roberts.
Bailey Roberts seems to be having connection issues to get into the meeting.
I'll mark as absent at the moment, thank you. Councillor Rome.
I'm here, thank you.
Bailey Sawyers.
And I'm here.
Councillor Short.
Good evening, here.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
I'm here.
Councillor Toland.
Hello, Happy New Year, I'm here.
Bailey Keenan.
Present.
Councillor Cruikshank.
Present.
Councillor Finnegan. Councillor Finnegan.
Could you put her apologies in, please, if she's not here?
I will do, thank you. Councillor McHugh.
Present.
Councillor McIrvin. Councillor McIrvin.
Present.
Thank you. I've received apologies for Councillor Malone. Councillor Scullin.
Present.
Councillor Shears.
Present.
Bailey Wright.
Present.
Bailey McPherson.
Good evening, present.
Councillor Coleman.
Good evening.
Councillor Crichton,
Present.
Councillor Duncan,
Here.
Hayley Scott.
Here.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call.
Thank you, Elaine. Roger?
Thank you again, Lord Provost. Lord Provost, members of the Council, there is one item of business this evening, the minutes for information and record purposes.
Are there any questions? Well, reticent as I am to actually ask a question myself here, I'm going to, if I may, Roger, because in the minutes I appear to be at 2 of the meetings on the 20th of November and not at 2, and I wasn't there at all actually on the 20th. I was ill. So can I just flag that up?
Thank you very much for confirming that, Lord Provost. I'll assure that the minutes are suitably amended.
Thank you very much. Is this agreed? Thank you very much. That's City Council.
Thank you, Lord Provost. The next committee is the Fair Work, Economic Growth and Infrastructure Committee.
Thank you, Roger, and welcome to the Fair Work, Economic Growth and Infrastructure Committee. And Happy New Year from me as well. Can we have the first item, please?
Thank you, Convener. Item 1, Declaration of Interest. Are there any declarations to the agenda as it stands?
Can't see any currently. Do we have any? I'm not seeing any messages, so I'll take that as a no. So next item, please.
Thank you. There being no declarations. Item 2, Civic Government Scotland Act 1982, street names. A is a new residential development at Finent Grove, Dundee.
Do we have any questions or comments on item A? I'm not seeing any at this time. Can that be agreed? Take that as agreement, thank you. And item B, please.
Is new residential development at Tom Johnson Road, Dundee.
Any questions or comments on this one? I'm not seeing any. Can that be agreed? Thank you. I'll take that as agreement. Next item, please, Elaine.
Thank you. Item 3, Dundee City Council, Millamain stopping up of access roads, footpaths and footways order 2024.
The committee is asked to reapprove the commencement of this order conditional upon the current application for planning permission being granted and to grant delegate authority to the Executive Director of State Development to instruct the making of the order once planning permission has been granted and thereafter, if no objections are received, to instruct the order be confirmed. Do I have any questions or comments on this item from anyone? Don't see any hands or any comments. I'll take that as agreed then. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 4 is Environmental Improvement Works 2023-24, and this is for approval.
So this item seeks approval for further environmental improvement works as part of the 2023-2024 programme. It includes a range of projects which will be undertaken across the city designed to improve and enhance open spaces and make them safer and more attractive places for residents to enjoy across Dundee. Councillor Crichton, I believe you've got a question here.
Thank you. Actually, a comment and a question, if that's all right, Convener. I just want to take the opportunity to thank officers for the proposed works at Greater Balgay, including the new fence at Rose Garden and the cemetery wall repairs. Bill McPherson and I were recently contacted about the fencing repairs required, about the boundary fence to the cemetery and Royal Victoria Hospital immediately north of Elliot Road, and we're really grateful of officers' efforts and the prompt action to raise these order repairs. But can I ask that local elected members are sent details of the precise locations of the proposed bollards on Balgay Hill, please? Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Crichton. I'm sure officers will appreciate those comments. I think Mr Boyle is on the call tonight, and I'm sure he can pick that up with you. If you could confirm, please, Mr Boyle.
Thanks, Convener. Thanks for the kind comments. Councillor Crichton, yeah, I can confirm I can provide those details. There's a new black steel palisade fence going in. I will get the details around the bollards and the stuff you've asked for. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Boyle. Does that satisfy your question, Mr Crichton?
Yeah, great. Thank you. I'll take it up with
Thank you.
Offline. Cheers.
Thank you. Next item, please, then, Elaine.
Item 5, City Centre Strategic Investment Plan Update and Next Steps.
So this report provides the committee with an update following the approval of the City Centre Strategic Investment Plan, which is easier to see written than say. The report sets out progress across the 5 key themes of the document, as well as seeking approval to prioritise and focus the next phase of capital and revenue investment in the eastern quarter of the city centre. Bailey McPherson, please.
Thanks, Convener, and Happy New Year to everyone. You may recall that at the time we discussed improvements in Union Street, our group did make the point that we felt that there was a real need for focus on the Murraygate, given the number of units that are now empty, the loss of, for example, HSBC, and the impending loss of the M&S store, and a number of longer-term empty units. So we're very pleased indeed to see this therefore coming forward. I would make the point that streetscape works are very welcome, and this is potentially a substantial investment in Commercial Street and Murraygate. However, what we would want, and I'm sure officers will confirm that they will be doing this, is to ensure that there is good engagement with unit owners, not just in relation to encouraging them to look at innovative ways to try to fill empty units, but also to look at improving the streetscape by, frankly, the removal of graffiti. Now, I know Councillor Duncan has also reported city centre graffiti. I've reported graffiti, and I'm sure the local members in the area have as well. Now, walking along the Murraygate today, you will see the former HSBC unit. Now, that's a big company with, frankly, a very healthy financial position. And I think some engagement with them on removing the graffiti mess on the empty unit. And also there's a unit directly opposite HSBC, a much smaller unit, but nonetheless looks pretty awful, to be perfectly frank. And I noticed that some cities and towns across the country have, working in partnership with private sector owners, managed to get empty units to look a lot more tidy, and perhaps put something in the front of the shop to make it look as though it may be, looking a little bit less unoccupied. A good example of that locally, actually, the Wellgate Centre management have done a little bit of that within the Wellgate Centre, and I think that's a good thing. So I'm hoping that we will see not just the streetscape works that this report alludes to and seeks, recommends that we approve, which I'm sure we will want to. But I think ongoing engagement with unit owners in not just the Murraygate, but specifically and particularly the Murraygate, given the current situation there, would be very, very welcome. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Bailey McPherson, for your supportive comments, and I totally understand where you're coming from. I can understand as well the frustration with graffiti, and I know that's something that the City Centre Manager has had a particular focus on. I'll bring in Mr Hamilton for your comments regarding the City Centre, and then perhaps Mr Boyle might be able to say something about the work that are done across the department to combat graffiti in the City Centre. But Mr Hamilton, please.
Thank you, Convener. I would give Bailey McPherson the assurance that we will engage with property owners, traders in the Murraygate and the wider area. And I think it's important to note that we work very closely with colleagues in neighbourhood services under the Take Pride in Your City initiative to improve and work with stakeholders in the city centre. And notwithstanding the capital investment that we're seeking approval for tonight, I think a lot of the small-scale housekeeping measures that the traders and businesses in the city centre themselves can take responsibility for, they will make a difference. So we work very closely with Mr Boyle's team on those matters. In relation to the units themselves, we have worked with some property owners to try and ensure that where shops are vacant, we give the best possible appearance. There are a couple of units on Reform Street where we've used vinyls, sometimes just to promote the City Centre Strategic Investment Plan itself or the Dundee Loves Local initiative. On others, we have covered the shop front, and we work with a local company just to use that shop front for promoting local events and activities. it's a short-term temporary measure, but I think we recognise that unless we keep on top of these matters, it can lead to problems within the city centre. So I think we take the comments that Billy McPherson has made and will continue to promote the investment and work with owners to try and improve the city centre.
Thank you, Mr Hamilton. Mr Boyle?
That's good. Yeah, just to confirm what Mr Hamilton said, we have a very good working relationship. We're on top of the graffiti management across the city as best we can. There's been quite a number of instances recently in City Square, particularly the pen going down to Castle Street, I think over a dozen times in the last 3 months. But the aim is to try and get to keep on top of that to kind of zero tolerance approach. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Mr Boyle. Next question is from, if that's okay, Billy McPherson, I presume that's
very helpful comments from both Mr Boyle and Mr Hamilton. I'm grateful to them both. Thank you.
Thank you. Bailey Scott, please.
Thanks, Convener. I wanted to ask about the section that deals with prominent buildings that are in a poor and deteriorating physical condition, particularly the King's Theatre, and I've corresponded with the department recently about that, so I'm pleased to see that it's included in the report in the way that it is. But when it talks about encouraging the maintenance and reuse of these buildings, I just wondered what form of encouragement will that take, and how will we compel the owners to bring it back to its former glory, and will the council be using its powers available to it in respect of listed buildings to make sure something happens there?
Thanks, Billy Scott. Mr Hamilton?
Thank you, Convener. The Council has various statutory powers that it can use, and it's ensuring that we use the right power in the right circumstance. So under the Building Scotland Act, there are provisions where we can serve notice for defective buildings, and if the situation is more serious, it can be a dangerous buildings notice. In situations where the terms of a dangerous building notice are not complied with, we can actually undertake works themselves and seek to recover the costs from the building owner. But sometimes we try and get in ahead of those statutory notices and work with property owners to remind them of their responsibilities to keep buildings in good standards of repair. But there are powers that we can use where they fail to do so. I think, Bailey Scott, you mentioned powers under the Listed Building and Conservation Areas legislation, and in appropriate circumstances we can also use those. But often they don't do enough to bring the building back to its full glory. They may just deal with the particular issues with the building itself. So I think we're trying to use the city centre strategic investment plan to ensure that there is a long-term plan, not just for the maintenance of the exterior fabric, but to ensure that these important buildings that are part of Dundee's heritage are brought back into future use, and they make a contribution. Not just they look better, but they actually are driving footfall, encouraging vibrancy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Hamilton. Thank you, Bailey Scott. Next, I've got Councillor Short, please.
Good evening, Convener. It was just a couple of things. First of all, I think Gregor picked up on what I was going to say about the decals. One of the more memorable ones is the old registrars in Commercial Street. I know it well because that's where I get my bus, and I know that decal they are making it look more attractive has meant that there's a new tenant going in there soon, so that's quite exciting. So these decals do make a difference, I genuinely believe. We're also fighting against a massive change in direction when it comes to our city centres, obviously. And I'm proud to say, not that I get for that many people, but I managed to get all my Christmas shopping on the high street, and I made a point of doing that because ultimately we've got to vote with our feet as well and lead by example. But I do think that what's going to happen in the Overgate is another reason why we have to be especially aware of what's happening in the Murraygate. So I'm really pleased to see this investment coming along. And again, it's a little bit like if you don't see something, no one actually notices the difference. And some of us may have noticed that they're doing a consultation at the moment about the retail bins that have disappeared from our city centre. And they've done a brilliant project between City Development and Neighbourhood Services. and the bins that you would see as you walk towards the Arctic Bar, which were 5, 6, 7, which were belonging to various businesses around the area, are no longer out like that. Cutie's Wine is another one. So I think although we get often chastised for our city centres and how bleak they are, I think sometimes we're very unwilling to praise actually the great things that are happening as well. So I'd like to thank the work that sometimes goes on unseen and what's been happening with that. And I'm really pleased to see that we're going to do additional stuff going forward. So thank you for bringing this, and thank you to everybody that's been involved.
Thank you, Councillor Short, for your comments. And again, I mentioned the City Centre Manager earlier, and Gaynor has done a power of work in that specific project of getting those commercial bins off our streets. So she can only be commended for that. As you say, it's the things that are unseen that make that difference. So thanks for highlighting that again. Councillor Scullin, please.
Hello. I've just got a wee comment to make on the part where it says the event strategy has been approved. It says it's the event strategy 25 to 30, but the event strategy was actually dated 24th to 29. And also just a wee question about the lighting on Exchange Street. Although it looks great, I think it looks fantastic. I just feel like it's a shame it sort of ends halfway down the street. I wondered if there was any plans to continue that lighting or maybe go out onto Commercial Street or up Castle Street with it.
Thank you for that, Councillor Scullin. We'll get that double checked. I'll bring in Mr. Hamilton, because my understanding was that works in Exchange Street were in progress. I'm not sure if it's now finished or not. There was one catering that was up and there was a second due up. So I don't know if it is finished, but Mr. Hamilton, you can maybe confirm whether those works have been completed.
Convener, I think you are right that there's further works that have been done in the last couple of days. I think the last of the lighting has now been installed within the budget that we had available and the approvals that we secured previously. But I think that's a project that brought the traders in Exchange Street together to discuss what they think they would like to do that would improve Exchange Street. And it's an example that we would look to follow in other streets in the city centre where we have budget that would allow those types of intervention to be made. And streets like Castle Street, I think, would be ideal opportunities for that in the future.
Thank you for that, and thank you for your comment, Councillor Scullin. Last, I've got Bailey Keenan, please.
Thanks, Convener. Convener, obviously we're a cash-strapped council and we're going to spend considerable money on the streetscape. And, I'm not going to stand in the way of that, but wondering, if officers have given any consideration to pressure washing areas within the city. Given that, come the summer, most people in tidying up their garden will start by pressure washing their monoblock and their driveways, the paving slabs round about to remove moss, make the place look a bit tidier. And it would appear that in some areas of the city, a sort of pressure wash would lift that area enough. So I'm wondering if there's any consideration being given to that, and if not, why we're not doing it. Because, there's some areas look quite tired in Mankey. Washing them a bit would make a difference.
Thanks, Bailey Keenan. I totally understand your point of view, and thanks for the support comments about the streetscape works, which are welcome. I think probably we're still in winter and going into the spring, and I would imagine there'd be those kind of clear-up works you described, but I'll maybe bring in Mr. Boyle to see if there's anything on the horizon.
Thanks, Convener. Thanks, Bailey Keenan. That's a very relevant point about the jet washing of the hard standings throughout the city. I can update committee that we actually have recently brought in a deck scrubber. It's a very specialist bit of kit that allows us to do that detailed scrubbing. And anyone who may have noticed City Square, for example, over the last 4 months has been treated continuously, so much so that it actually came up as almost a different colour. It had been scrubbed so well. We've been continuing that work through the Nethergate, Murraygate, over the last couple of months. It was on hire for 3 months, the piece of equipment, and we're looking to get that back in again because it's obviously made a great improvement to the kind of the public realm within the city, and we will take on board other locations across the city if we're able to get that in the future. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. That's really interesting to know. There being no other comments, can this item be agreed? Thank you. I'll take that as agreement. Next item then, please, Elaine.
Thank you, Convener. Item 6, Dundee Food and Sustainability Event 2024.
So this report seeks approval for the development and delivery of a new festival focused on food and sustainability. If approved, the festival will take place at the end of May or the beginning of June 2024. It will principally be focused based in the city centre, but there will be opportunities for a range of community groups, businesses and wider stakeholders to participate in events across the city. I believe, Councillor Coleman, you're first with questions and a comment as well, I believe. Please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Convener. As you recall, our group view the loss of the long-standing flower and food event at Camperdown Park as quite unfortunate, and greater effort should have been made to retain it, but we are where we are. Whilst I would agree that some event is better than no event at all, we are concerned that both this report at 4.8 and the media messaging has emphasised modest in scale, and the scoping document is quite short and lacks any real detail. In light of this, could I ask the Director if, once the working group is established, regular updates on progress are given by the group or the department to all elected members, please?
I think that, as you say, there's a bit of work still to be done on this, but I'll bring in Mr. Hamilton just to elucidate that. Mr. Hamilton?
Thank you, Convener. As noted in the report, I think this is a new event in the city, and in some ways we want to test various things before we see how things progress, and the hope would be that over time the scale and the scope of the event will increase, but building on where we achieve success and where we try new things that maybe are less successful, we can adapt year on year. I think the suggestion from Councillor Coleman about providing an update to members, we're happy to do that once the proposed steering group has met and we have a little bit more of the detail that he referred to. I think that's something that officers would be willing to do.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. And thank you, Councillor Coleman. Sorry, you finished?
Yes, as we say, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, that didn't come through very clearly. Councillor Shears, I think you're next.
Thanks, Convener. I've got one small question, one a bit more substantial. I think Greg has touched on it. The first question would be, in terms of the financial outlay from the council, what's the difference in terms of what we'll be spending on this one compared to the old event at Camperdown? And secondly, it would be good to know what the justification is to take it away from Camperdown. We know that Camperdown has the ability to hold these big events. It's proven with the Flower and Food Festival in the past and with big weekends, but I think Gregor has touched on it a bit there with the aiming to try something new as a new thing rather than a direct replacement.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, Councillor Shears. This is something very new, and it's very much about partnership working with different agencies, and that may not be particularly suited to being in the same venue. Also, there's the accessibility angle, but I'll bring in Mr. Hamilton again. Sorry, that's my laptop. Mr. Hamilton?
Thank you, Convener. I maybe need to get back to Councillor Shears on the budget that previously was used, unless Mr. Boyle or Ms. Swirling can answer for the former Flower and Food Festival. I think it was a significantly higher sum, and obviously that event, there was much that depended on the weather that impacted on the number of people that attended and bought tickets. The event that we're proposing in the city centre, the vast majority of activity we anticipate being free, so there will be no ticketed element to the parts that the council is responsible for. But of course, we're suggesting that there may be other partners that will come in and provide activities under the banner of this event, and it may be that some of those events may have a charge for that, but that would be for those organisers to be responsible for. The thinking behind bringing something into the city centre is because of the benefit that businesses and the accessibility of the city centre brings. So for many people, getting to Camperdown, if they didn't have access to a car, could be more challenging. Whereas a lot of the public transport routes coming into Dundee come into the city centre. And if we can bring an event into a very accessible location, there is benefits to all those who may wish to attend. That's true also for a lot of the active travel routes. And because of the focus of the event on sustainability as well as food, I think it's important that we try and make sure that we live those values through the organisation of the event. There is also the potential to, as I said, have benefits to the retailers, the hospitality businesses in the city centre by driving that footfall into the centre of Dundee, encouraging them to stay. So we're thinking that this will be initially at least a 2-day event. And it may be that if people are encouraged to travel to Dundee for the event, they might stay overnight, eat out in the evening and other things. So that's the thinking behind bringing it into the city centre. Some of the analysis, I think, that was done of the event in Camperdown, a lot of people travelled to the event and then left and went home again, and there was no wider benefit to the city from that activity. So that's the thinking that we have behind the location.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. I think that's very helpful, and I hope you agree, Councillor Shears.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Bailey McPherson, please.
Thanks, Convener. I agree with the point that Councillor Coleman made in relation to our group viewed the loss of the Camperdown event as unfortunate, but I think, as he said, we are where we are. We need to make the best of what we now have. And I just want to make, and I don't want you to appear negative, but I do want to make 2 comments regarding the content of the report, and also the media messaging that went out regarding the launch of this, as it were. I would be grateful if maybe this modest in scale bit is dropped, because it read to me in the media stuff like it was a little event in the corner, don't expect too much. And I think that's not a messaging that we don't, this isn't simply another doors open day for community gardens. It has to be more than that. And I think it's important that the modest bit is not taken forward, and that we view this as a very positive thing, whether or not we viewed the loss of the event at Camperdown as unfortunate. The other thing is, and I fully accept that the title, the working title, Food for Thought, is not the final title. We will all have different views. My view is I didn't think that sounded exactly upbeat, if I'm being perfectly honest. It sounded more like the Reverend I Am Jolly's Sunday sermon title, to be perfectly honest. And I really feel that something a bit more upbeat. I mean, I would prefer Dundee Food Festival 2024 to that, to be honest. Now, we'll all have our views, and at the end of the day, we remit it to the working group to move this all forward, and I'm grateful to Mr Hamilton for his confirmation to Councillor Coleman that we'll all be kept updated. I think that's welcome. But as I say, just a couple of points about the modest in scale and the working title, and we'll look forward to updates from the working group in due course. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Bailey McPherson. I'm sure we'll take that on board, and I have to say, I don't think I particularly disagree with much of that. Bailey Scott.
Thanks, Convener. I wanted to ask you about the working group and what stage other stakeholders will be pulled in to ask for input into it. And I'm thinking in particular of Broughty Ferry Traders Association, who have a proven track record of facilitating really good events, and they'll have lots of businesses that want to take part in this festival. So would they be invited to take part in the working group?
Mr Hamilton?
Thank you, Convener. I think we're at a very early stage at the moment, so we've had some tentative discussions with organisations that we think will want to play a part in this event, but it's something that we are open to involving many others, and if they want to do something under that banner of the event, I think we would be very supportive of that. So I'll make note and pass on to colleagues the potential interest of the Traders Association in Broughty Ferry and make sure that appropriate contact is made.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Thank you, Bailey Scott. Councillor Short, please.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to come in and say that obviously it's whetted the appetite, sorry Fraser, that's nearly as bad as food for thought, of some of the organisations within the Maryfield ward who've already been in touch to say that they're championing at the bit to get involved. So hopefully that's something that we'll see across the board, and people will want to get involved in something as exciting as this. As modest as we can be as Dundee, be bold, be ambitious, be Dundee. So we'll just see how modest it can be, and as long as we all get behind it and not be too negative about it, I'm sure it can be as cracking as some of the other things that we put on, like 16 days of activism and the Women's Festival and all the other things that focus on all the great things in and around our community. So thank you for bringing this forwards.
Thank you again, Councillor Short. I see no further comments, so can this item be agreed, please? Thank you. I'll take that as agreement. Next item then, please, Elaine.
Thank you. Item 7, dosing, monitoring and maintenance of water feature active travel hub 5-year contract.
Thank you. This item seeks approval of a sourcing strategy for the dosing, monitoring and maintenance of the water feature and associated equipment at the active travel hub, as Elaine has just said. Do you have any questions or comments on this item? Just give it a few seconds. I can't see any raised hands or comments, so can this be agreed? Thank you. Next item, please.
Thank you. Item 8, inspection, testing and maintenance of fire extinguishing equipment 7-year contract.
This item seeks approval for the commencement of a sourcing strategy to provide the inspection, testing and maintenance of fire extinguishing equipment in council properties across the city. Do you have any questions or comments on this item? No. Can I take that as agreed then? Thank you. Next item, please, Elaine.
Item 9 is inspection, testing and maintenance of air handling and air conditioning units 7-year contract.
This item seeks approval for the commencement of a sourcing strategy to provide the inspection, testing and maintenance of air handling and air conditioning units in council properties across the city. Do you have any questions or comments on this item? No. Can that please be agreed then? Thank you. I'll take that as agreement. Next item, please.
Item 10, inspection, testing and maintenance of roller shutter doors 5-year contract.
This item seeks approval for the commencement of a sourcing strategy to provide the inspection, testing and maintenance of roller shutter doors in council properties across the city. And I think you may be seeing a theme here. Do you have any questions or comments on this item? Bailey Keenan.
Yeah, Convener, just really one for officers. I'm wondering, given the number of these contracts that we've put out for maintenance, whether any consideration was to bring some of these in-house and obviously use Dundee contracts to do them. You know, it's not, I don't think, an overly onerous task to be testing for Legionella within some of the water systems within the council. But why didn't we look towards some of these things being in-house and, you know, the ability to bring on apprentices and train individuals up so as it we're sustaining a workforce of our own with skills?
Thank you, Billy Keenan. Mr. Martin, I believe that your name's to this report. Maybe you can explain. I believe it's to do with the framework, but perhaps you can explain better.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Thanks, Bailey Keenan. Obviously, there's a vast array of health and safety contracts that we utilise across the council, and construction services are involved with some of those periodic testing and such like. And some of the items you see tonight are obviously quite specialised, but where there is appropriate opportunity to utilise construction services, or as you allude to, develop and expand and look at a younger workforce, those opportunities are looked at in conjunction when we're putting these reports together. So it may be as we go forward, there are other areas that do come in-house at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Does that answer your question, Billy Keenan?
You know, I suppose when we put contracts out for 7 years, it looks a bit unlikely we'd bring it back in. But I mean, I would like these things kept under review, because I believe that we could be training up good skilled individuals in doing the type of work like that. Roller shutter doors are obviously used extensively throughout the council on short premises and the like, and no doubt, you know, we'd be training up the workforce for Dundee because there's many other places have them. So that's just one example of the potential of having an apprentice in there that could gain good skills and a future by way of you know, earning wages through that skill set for the rest of their life.
Thanks, Bailey Keenan. Bailey Scott, please.
I had a similar question to Bailey Keenan, but it's more to do with item 11.
Shall we? Can I have agreement for item 10 first, if that's all right? I don't see any disagreement, so I'll take item 10 as agreed then. I'll skip the introduction this time, as it's clear it's about water hygiene monitoring programme, and very similar to previous ones. It's a 7-year contract. So, Bailey Scott, your question.
Yeah, I heard what Mr. Martin said about the reasons why these have gone out for tender. But for something like water monitoring, I'd have thought that we would have had that availability, the speciality within our own environmental health or scientific services to do that. So can maybe explain a bit more as to why this particular one has gone out to tender and not being done in-house?
Mr. Martin?
In terms of this, there obviously is a lot to do with the water hygiene, and it's not just the testing and monitoring and the resources in the lab. It's also in terms of doing some on-the-spot repairs, maintenance, any further dosing and what have you. So there's quite a bit of infrastructure that's in at the back of some of the companies that are involved in this. It's not just a case of actually doing the testing and then that's fine and recording it. It's then having the proactive infrastructure, labour plant materials available if any reactive maintenance is required.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that. That's really helpful to have that better context. Thanks, Mr. Martin. Next item, please. Well, assuming that is agreed, I didn't see any further questions or dissent to the contrary, so I assume this item is agreed. Thank you. Next item, please, Elaine.
Thank you, Convener. Item 12 is tenders received.
So this item is seeking approval to accept the following 2 tenders: improvement of surface works to the Seven Arches Viaduct, Bracken, Sidlaw View and Templeton Woods to receive core woodland path improvements and welfare planting, and secure staff cycle parking installations at Grove, Morgan, Baldragon, Millamains and Rockwell. Do you have any questions on this item? Councillor Duncan, question or comment, please.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Just first of all, to welcome the forthcoming improvement works to the Seven Arches Viaduct. I understand it's a historical structure and responsibilities for this upkeep lie between Dundee and also Angus. So pleased to see that it's going to be improved and upgraded, not least because it's a very popular walking spot. Which brings me to my question, because in recent 2-3 weeks really, I've had a number of inquiries from residents about the accumulation of fallen leaves and other detritus, particularly on top of the walk, which presents a bit of a slip hazard. And it's just really a plea to officers that going forward, although I'm glad to see the arches being upgraded in some way with a better surface, can we just maybe ensure that the leaves, etc., are cleared up periodically? Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Duncan. Mr. Boyle, can you give that assurance that will be looked at in the context of that problem?
Thanks, Convener. Thanks, Councillor Duncan. Yes, we've got that programmed in just now, but I think it will be much easier, as Councillor Duncan alludes, in terms of the new surface going down. It'll be much easier to manage in the future.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. Councillor Coleman, you're next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Convener. I welcome the network works at Sidlaw View, Brackens, Templeton Woods, but we just ask if it's possible for the plans and drawings of the details proposed to be shared with local members, elected members, please. And also, given the usual weather issues that we invariably have in the early part of the year, is completion by the end of March deliverable?
Mr. Boyle, are you able to answer those 2 questions?
Thanks, Convener, Councillor Coleman. Yeah, that is very much the programme, to have the works complete, and I'll certainly ensure that members are provided with details of the plans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Scullen, please.
Hi. I just got a question about the secure cycle parking. Is that going to be similar to the ones that we now have in other places in the town? And if so, do we have any figures on how many of those are being used?
Mr. McNaughton?
Yeah, thank you very much, Convener. Thank you for the question. I don't have figures to hand on usage, but what I'll do is I'll ask one of our officers to share those figures with you, and also the design specifications for what's proposed to be installed.
Thank you, Mr. McNaughton. Does that answer your question, Councillor Scullen?
It does, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn, please.
Thanks, Convener. Just to follow up on the cycle storage, have we got plans to roll this out over other schools within the city with the support from Cycling Scotland going forward?
Mr. McNaughton?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's very much budget dependent, so we are utilising external grant funding. Certainly, it's our intention to continue this programme. However, that is subject to continuing national funding externally to do so.
Yes, Flynn?
Thanks very much for that, because I think it's really important that we lead by example, convener, and giving the teachers the opportunity to use cycling and actually store their bikes there. I'm sure the Cycling Forum, for example, will be delighted to hear that, and fellow cyclists within the city. So thanks very much for that. And I think we should continue to work with Cycling Scotland, knowing that there's a budget set aside to support active travel and sustainable transport in the coming years. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for pointing that out. And as you are well aware, we're always keen to bid for external funding for that. And Cycling Scotland have been extremely supportive of the projects that we've done in the city, and hopefully will continue to do so as long as we apply. So it's something we'll very much keep at it and keep doing. Councillor Short, please.
So it's just a wee lobby, seeing as we're looking at the school and the buildings across the school campus. Can we also look at leisure and culture? Because there's nothing better than cycling up to do your various bits of keep fit and leisure and then leaving on your bike as well. I don't know if there's conversations that exist between City Development and Leisure and Culture with regards to active travel, but if there's not, can we open up that dialogue? Because I think that would be really useful between those different buildings within the footprint as well, please.
That's Councillor Short. Mr. McNaughton, are you aware of any such conversations? Or?
Yeah, thank you very much, convener. Yes, we do liaise with all departments, including leisure and culture, and we have got some proposals which will be likely reporting at next committee in regard to cycle infrastructure at leisure and culture facilities.
Thank you, Mr. McNaughton. To answer your question, Councillor Short? Good, thank you. I see no further questions, so can this item be agreed? Thank you, I'll take that as agreement. Next item, please, then, Elaine.
Thank you, convener. That concludes the public part of the agenda. Can the confidential item be dealt with in the usual way?
Can this item be dealt with in the usual manner? I see no questions or comments, so I'll take that as agreement. Thank you. And I believe that's the last item of the Fair Work, Economic Growth and Infrastructure Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. The final committee this evening is the City Governance Committee.
Good evening, folks. We'll just go straight to the agenda. So I'll pass over to you, Willie.
Yeah, thanks very much. Firstly, are there any declarations of interest?
See no one rushing for the keyboard, so we'll take that as a no.
Yeah, thank you very much. There being no declarations takes you on to item 2, the Chief Executive Service Plan, which is for noting.
So this is the regular update that we receive in terms of the Chief Executive's service, and you'll see that there's a range of statistics and information, quite comprehensive in terms of the performance against the outcomes that we had anticipated. 11 of the 18 indicators in the plan have improved or been maintained, which again is to be welcome, but of course there's always room for improvement, and I know speaking to officers that they are very much focused on continuing to see improvement across all 18 of those indicators as well. So I'll just open it up for questions. Bailey Keenan.
Thanks, convener. Convener, I'm sort of looking at this report and taking into account the last report that we've got on this evening that paints a serious picture about how bleak the finances in the city are and how underfunded we are from government. But just looking at obviously the tools that we may have available, and that being that there's a potential for tourist tax. There is a number of things within the report that would lead me to ask whether there is any information that would suggest that the city is ready and needs to start seriously looking at whether a tourist tax is something that we need to introduce. If our hotels are starting to be full, and whether it's going to dent the city's recovery if it was introduced, because there's reference made to obviously visitors, a recovery plan, a real-time dashboard for the centre, a marketing strategy. So I'm wondering whether out of all of that, what's coming up on what was likely to come up on the dashboard, and is there any indication that now would be the time for Dundee to be thinking about, adding a small fee onto each of the tourist beds in the city by way of covering the shortfall for government?
Thanks for the question, Billy Keenan. I'll offer a response initially and then go to officers. So I think this was actually raised, I'm sure last month, if not the month before, and officers did give an initial response. Certainly Robin Presswood, I recall, gave an initial response to say that it's under active consideration, and officers are engaging with colleagues in Edinburgh who are significantly more advanced given the scale of the tourism and hospitality sector in particular in Edinburgh. Should also say that it's been part of a body of work that's been undertaken through the Scottish Cities Alliance, of which I'm the chair. So this, amongst a whole series of other asks and discussions around other leveraging powers and taxation powers, being devolved further to local government, particularly the cities where this is most relevant. So there's a whole spectrum of work that is behind that, I suppose. And again, as I say, Edinburgh have been leading the charge and very much kind of learning from them. I'm also on the record as saying I absolutely agree with you. I support the introduction of transient visitor levy, as it's called under the legislation. What we've got to make sure is we've got all of the available information and the sums to make sure that we do that at the right time, as you rightly suggest, and that we're clear on what that revenue will generate. It isn't necessarily free money, if that's the term to use, in the sense that it must, under the legislative tools that have been set out, relate to expenditure which has some connection to tourism, of course. So it can't necessarily just go into any old budget and be subsumed into something else. There's a lot of other work that needs to go alongside that. But I'll perhaps in the first instance come to Robin, given that I do recall he offered a response previously. Robin.
Chair, many thanks. And I would certainly endorse everything you've said. I think it's right to be cautious about this legislation. It hasn't yet been passed by Scottish Parliament, but we anticipate it'll be passed in August of this year. It then requires a significant consultation period and engagement with the industry. And as you can imagine, I think there will be real caution in the industry, not just about the principle and level of it, but also the practicalities and cost of administering such a scheme. I think it's clear to say, although we can see the end of COVID, there are a few hotels that are actually confidently saying they're exceeding the pre-2019 turnover yet. And I think members are very aware of the conference market not having returned to normal. We have seen some fairly bullish figures, but again, I think we clarified that some of the refugees and asylum seekers were potentially distorting that, though it's obviously hard to separate out that data. So we shouldn't be too bullish about seeing this as being an easy win. We think the consultation and engagement process with the accommodation providers will require to be about 18 months. And we specifically need to understand what the legislation covers. So, for example, does it include Airbnb and similar platforms? And certainly my view would strongly be that it should include those, because we're seeing such a growth in that sector. There's no doubt that it's undermining the traditional hotel, guest house and bed and breakfast type market. So we need to understand whether Scottish Parliament is giving us the powers to enforce that, and crucially what the route to secure that funding is. I think the idea of a voluntary levy on the providers is very difficult. I think it would need to be administered at central level so we could secure the payments directly from Airbnb and the similar operators. So that's a key part of the discussion. The levy will take part of a percentage of the rate charged by accommodation providers per night, and obviously we need to see the guidance in the final act as approved on that, but the percentage can be set locally. We can look at any exemptions as we see appropriate as part of the setting of a local scheme, so you understand that there will be a considerable amount of dialogue and work on that. Cost to the council should not be underestimated, and that's a key part of our discussion with colleagues in corporate finance. Is we will require to recruit an additional team to administer this, depending on the form of the levy payments and how they're going to be calculated, and what the proposals from Scottish Parliament is around that. So it's not a particularly easy way. It's not an easy way of generating general funds, as Councillor Alexander has highlighted. It does require to be invested in local facilities and services used by visitors, and obviously there's different ways of interpreting that, but I think there very clearly are restrictions on how we can use it, and I think certainly the intention of the Act was to improve facilities rather than to substitute for reductions in funding elsewhere.
Thanks, Robin. I think in summary, it's an active work piece, and I think what would be helpful, I think, Kevin, not only for yourself and probably all other elected members, is at some point over the coming weeks, Robin, a briefing note that sets out some of that context in terms of where we are at the present time, because obviously the legislation, I think, was laid out in May of 2023, so just understanding where we're at, what provisions might look like, and then also some narrative from a Dundee perspective, I think would be incredibly helpful. But Kevin, do you want to come back in?
I should probably put on the record that it's something that I'm not overly keen to have, but just see that Dundee City Council was just left absolutely cash-strapped by the lack of funding that's coming from government. Coming away with things like we're fully funded council tax when we're looking at the last paper this evening just is not true. So, I think that we need to look at every avenue that brings a bit of money into the city, and that being one of them, without hurting the individuals that live here.
Thanks for your comments, Kevin. I'm sure we'll have more of a discussion on the financial outlook when we come to that item. And I think in summary, you're for it, but not for it, and looking at all measures possible. So again, we'll get that briefing note, and again, we'll consider that, and then it will come back at the appropriate time. Councillor McHugh, Dorothy.
Thank you. I have a question on page 11 of this bundle relating to integrated impact assessments. And I'm very pleased to see that refresher training sessions are underway. I'm a wee bit concerned about the timescale for this action. It's not going to be completed. It's planned to be completed over 2 years from now. Considering that an integrated impact assessment is a very important tool, and it's attached to reports, proposing changes to policy or strategy, really useful for us as decision makers to know the implications of any decisions that we're making at council. And I wonder if there's any possibility that this could be speeded up a little. We have already had, I believe, a review of integrated impact assessments. I have some concerns that I have relayed to officers around them. So I wonder if, this could be fast-tracked, if, in any way possible, because I think it's really important for elected members to have good information when they're making their decisions.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree with that. And I'll come to Andrea, Head of Service, in just 2 seconds. I think the important thing is to say that it needs to be an ongoing piece of work. So even after the completion date, of course, there'll be new staff that are coming in that require that refresher training, etc. So it will be an ongoing piece of work. But Andrea, I'll bring you in.
Yeah, I think you've just answered it, convener. So the training is underway at the moment. We've done training last year, so there's training in place for this year. And it will be in place the following year and the following year. So it's a continuous process. So the training is already in place, and a lot of officers have gone through recent training over the last couple of months. So we've been progressing that fairly quickly. And the continuous review is just to keep looking at the process to make sure it is working for elected members and officers, and to make any improvements as we go along. We had some teething problems with the tool, so it was a lot of that was being ironed out and making things a bit better, and we're happy to take any feedback from any of the assessments people see.
Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you.
Are you okay, Dorothy?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I see no further questions on this, so can I take this item as agreed, please? Thank you very much. Willie, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Item 3 then is capital.
Thanks, Convener. Members will recall that last month I expressed a view that I wasn't happy with the way underspends were being reported in the financial implications. And I just want to place on record my thanks to officers. The Chief Executive said at the time that officers would reflect on my comments, and they've been as good as their word, and the wording has been altered, and I'm grateful for officers taking that on board and would like to thank them.
Thanks for that. I'm sure officers are very receptive to those thanks. So thanks for your comment. I see no other questions on the report. So can I take this as agreed? Thank you very much. Willie.
Okay, thank you. Item 4 then is revenue monitoring. This is also for noting.
Again, hopefully self-explanatory. So I'll just go straight to questions. Councillor Coleman. Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Convener. With regard to the flooding costs information at 3.3, have the council's costs from October been finalised? If so, what's the total, and will any support through the Bellwyn scheme be likely? With regard to support for individuals, how much is the level of funding, and has it yet been paid to all eligible households?
Thanks very much for the question, Daniel. I know that colleagues in a particular couple of wards have been asking similar questions, so happy for officers to come in and offer a response to that. I think I'll go to Robert in the first instance, and then perhaps others may want to come in. Robert.
So thank you, Convener. So I'm happy to share details about the costs we think will incur on the back of Bellwyn. We're still in discussion with the Scottish Government about what support we will get from them in due course. I think the officers who are involved in that are also involved in the budget. So I just got a response today from Scottish Government officials. I'm happy to share further information in relation to what we'll get in relation to Bellwyn then in due course. Convener, just in relation to payments to individuals, we've had about 70 applications so far and payments made, I think, to about 50 of those going forward, and we're just going to have a final shot at making sure that everyone who wishes to apply has the opportunity to do so.
Thanks, Robert. Just on the back of that then, so can you confirm that there'll be, I suppose, a further opportunity to highlight that through comms? Is that something that you're liaising with comms to ensure that that messaging does reach those that may well want to apply that haven't done so far?
And yes, Convener, and we reached out directly to, I think, over 100, I think 140 or so properties. So we'd, rather than putting out a general comms message, we'd reached out to the individual properties that we knew were affected. But Jackie Capel and her team are looking at the best way to make sure everyone's had the opportunity to respond. And if that requires wider communication, then we'll look at doing that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thanks to the team for their hard work on that as well. I'll go to the next question, which I think is Councillor Duncan. Craig?
Thanks, Convener. It's just on the same topic, to be honest. I'm reassured that, work is all obviously in progress to make sure that people who might benefit from the scheme are being contacted. I'm aware that there were several spots throughout the city, not just my ward, but and I'm not expecting chapter and verse tonight, certainly not, but I'm just keen that contact either has been made or will be made with the residents in my ward at Panmuirfield Den and also Balmossy Mill, and I'll just leave that to officers to perhaps provide details later.
Thanks, Craig. That's really helpful, and I can see officers taking notes, so that's appreciated. Okay, with that, is this item agreed? Thank you very much. We'll move on to the last item, Billy.
Yeah, thank you very much. The final item, item 5, is local government finance settlement financial implications for Dundee City Council. You're asked to agree the recommendations.
So I think it's worth saying thank you to officers who have worked extensively over the Christmas period to finalise this report, and of course thank you to members because you have been patient in awaiting the report, and I know officers have kept everyone abreast in terms of the work that was ongoing in order to get it to committee tonight. So I think with all of that said, I really again appreciate the efforts of quite a number of people in that regard. The report offers details of the 2045 financial settlement for local government and the implications for the City Council, and of course there is a number of pieces of information that come together to inform this report. And of course, it isn't set in stone at this stage either, so we need to be mindful of the fact that things can change further as the bill moves through the parliamentary process, and there may well be amendments or changes as it moves through that process. Section 3 of the report sets out the financial implications, and again, I think you'll all be live to that, and Billy Keenan has already referenced some of the significant challenges that we face as a local authority. I don't think anyone is shying away from that. There is broad acknowledgement of the fact that ultimately there is not enough money in the system to do everything that we certainly would want it to do as elected members and more broadly. And of course, that doesn't just go for local government, that's across the board. When we think about our colleges or universities, I'm a board member of NHS Tayside, there is a quantum that's required to sustain, to grow each and every element of public service, and it's incredibly challenging as a result of the financial outlook that the country faces, and of course not helped by more than a decade of austerity. And I was reflecting very recently with the Deputy Leader of the Council on the fact that since I was elected in 2012, we've had to make a series of challenging decisions over that entire period as a result of the austerity that was introduced post-banking crisis in 2009. None of which has made life any easier for local government. The Scottish Government circular is about the settlement, and of course there's ongoing dialogue between COSLA and the Scottish Government, of which I will be involved in some of that, and future COSLA leaders, and I'm happy to keep members abreast of those discussions as they move forward. But with all that said, I will open it up to comments and questions from colleagues. So I'll go to Bailey McPherson first.
Thanks, Convener. And I also would like to thank officers because obviously the settlement lands just at the festive period, and the fact that we have a report before us tonight I think is testimony to the hard work of officers and the ongoing work they're undertaking to help us deliver a budget next month. I'm also aware that there's slightly one hand tied behind their back in the sense that some aspects of the settlement are not yet taped down. And it's with that I have a question. I've absolutely no doubt the answer. Obviously, we don't have detail as yet as to the precise distribution of the 144 million relative to the council tax freeze. And I assume, and I have no doubt that he will, the Director of Corporate Services will advise all elected members immediately officers are given the exact figure. He's done a pretty reasonable calculation of what we're likely to get, but it would be good to know because it's pretty crucial to the final budget exactly how much of that 144 million Dundee City Council actually receives, perhaps more substantially, and I'm hoping we'll hear that this week, but I'm sure Mr Emmett will keep us updated. More substantially, over and above the very challenging revenue position, the capital position is also concerning. Now, as I understand it, officers will bring forward a report on the implications for the capital situation going forward in 24-25 and subsequent years. But I was wondering if tonight officers can give any detail of the likely impact of the settlement on projects that are approved within the capital programme, both those legally committed and those yet to commence. Thank you, Convener.
Thanks very much. Fraser, I'll go to Robert in the first instance. Robert.
Thank you, Convener. So, Billy McPherson, in relation to the first question, Convener, we don't yet know the distribution of the 144 million. We've asked COSLA to find out. We haven't yet got a response to that, and I will keep members updated when we get that and let you all know. In relation to the capital, you see in the report there's around about £1 million reduction. We're also looking at how the capital plan will shape up for the forthcoming period, given the changes that are known. At this time, there's no impact on committed projects, but obviously if there's less money available, we are having to look at what the options are to deliver the aspirations of the council within the resources that are available in the next 5-year plan. We had hoped to bring that forward in January. Now we're thinking that will come forward in February, probably just ahead of the budget. So you can have a look at the options and you can see how we might set a plan going forward. But it is challenging having a reduction in capital, and members will know we did quite a difficult exercise not long ago, really looking at cutting back on what was in the plan. So there's more work to be done, and we'll come back to committee in due course, Convener.
Thanks
I'm
very
grateful. I'm grateful for that response, Mr. Emmett. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Fraser, we'll go to Kevin.
Yeah, just a similar question for officers. Considerable cut in the housing grant, and wondering how that'll affect projects that we've got either in the pipeline or due to come. Because the council's got ambition of X amount of houses being, although they've never made their targets, but X amount of houses over each year. So how do we see this going forward? Is it a case that house building for the social rented sector will just cease? Where do we think we are?
I think I'll bring in Elaine in just a moment, but of course I don't think Elaine will have a definitive response given what Robert has already outlined in the fact that the budget has not yet been settled. But Elaine, bring you in at this point.
Thank you very much, Convener. As far as I'm aware, anything that's already been committed, so that has been approved by the Scottish Government, will continue. So we do have a healthy programme, and that will continue in terms of what's been approved. What we don't know is those projects that are in the pipeline and the approval process for those, and we're certainly in discussions with Scottish Government just to understand the implications of that for Dundee City.
Do we know what sort of stage things are at? Because we obviously must be backlogging considerably within the plan, given that the Derby Street things have taken over 7 or 8 years to come to fruition and only have got there through the intervention of the Chief Executive.
Thanks, Kevin. Elaine, do you want to come back in on that?
Well, certainly, if you look at the SHIP that was approved at previous committee, we've got a sizable chunk of our programme, Scottish Government on that.
Yeah, thanks, Elaine. And again, it goes without saying that, of course, we're incredibly ambitious in terms of the level of house building that we want to see, particularly social and council properties as well. And of course, we need to bring back information once everything crystallises, and we're absolutely clear on what the position is. So thanks for the question, Kevin. I'm sure officers will keep us abreast as things continue to move forward and develop. And of course, we'll be discussing the budget very soon. It's not going to be without its challenges. I think we all recognise that. And I'm also minded to, well, I certainly recall the recent statement from the IFS, who said that it was akin or broadly the same scale of cuts at a UK level under the current government as it was under George Osborne between 2010 and 2017, which is deeply concerning, I think, for all of us, given what we know the challenges and the demands on services across the board are. With all of that said, can I take this update report as agreed? Thank you very much. That is all the business. Thank you very much for your participation, your questions, and I shall see you all very soon. Take care.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.